Hello and welcome back to another episode of Power Rangers Lore. Today we're going to round up for the 5th Ranger of the main series of RPM. Now, this Ranger is known as Dillion or Subject D44. We're going to talk a little bit about his history and his connection to some of the characters and then go on from there. So stick tuned and buckle your seatbelts. Subject D44 is a complete mystery even to himself when he first shows up. He's kind of in a barren wasteland. We have no idea who he is, what he's doing out there, and how he's even surviving. We quickly realize that he is super strong, able to beat up grinders, complete amateur robots with his bare fists, not needing the help of any Power Ranger suit. No Ranger, before they became the Power Ranger, was able to defeat the main side villains like that so easy. Even back in the original Mighty Morphin, they had a hard time finding the putties, but Dillion has no problems whatsoever tearing from limb these grinders. And he first gets an idea. There's something more about this character. Well, as we go on, we kind of figure out that he is part cyborg in some ways. He's got internal Vengex hardware of at least Generation 7 caliber that boosts his physical capabilities to superhuman levels. So essentially he's a cyborg, or slowly converting into one. We know nothing about his past, and his name, Dillion, isn't even his real name. It's just part of the D44. Now we find out much later that he was nothing more than a test subject, along with his sister. And he had escaped by some unknown means from the facility, and would wander around finding his car and eventually make it 1 year later to the biodome of Corinth City. Now he would meet Ziggy outside, who would be trying to basically mug him for his vehicle and water, and Ziggy would be quickly found out that he was just mugging him with a used muffler, and they would get inside the city after getting past all the enemy troops, large guns, and the closing door that is Corinth City. So they would get inside there and quickly realize that he is not fully human, but part cyborg, or slowly turning part cyborg. Now, in there, he'd be thrown in prison immediately, thinking he was a spy of some sort, and they would basically realize that the prisoners in there he was not trapped there with the prisoners, but he was in there trapped. The prisoners were trapped in there with him. I know that did not come out smoothly, and I'm not going to re-record that, so don't worry. That's where he'd also meet his first friend, Ziggy. Now, he would meet him before, but he really wouldn't care about him until basically he realized in prison Ziggy was going to be beat up if he didn't step in, and it's kind of how Ziggy would get out of prison too. The Rangers, with Summer leading the way, would convince Dr. K along with Colonel Truman to take Dillion out and use him as a weapon against Vengex, that he's not a bad guy, he's on their side, and if he is a bad guy, they can keep him close by. So what they do is they take him in to bring Operation Series Black Ranger, and in response Dillion goes, "I'll go, but I have to get Ziggy out too," as like a mascot / assistant. Now, Dillion would be put through the rigorous training that would be considered to be very difficult for most of the other Rangers, basically the same levels of a astronaut, all those type of things, and he would have no issues, pass through all of them with flying colors, and actually would almost look bored upon doing that. Now, he would have a problem working with the other Rangers, mainly because he was always a loner. Always been that way and always would remain that way most of the time. He would clash with the Red Ranger and would not really be accepted by the Blue Ranger until a little bit later. The Yellow Ranger was the only one who saw him going through, and Summer would continually give a lot of support towards him. Now, Dr. K would talk down to him, as she did with most of the Rangers, trying to see them more as soldiers rather than actual people, but he would have a difficulty believing or trusting anything she said, because she was just a voice on the wall. However, over time, he would come to respect Scott as a leader somewhat, and get respect from the Blue Ranger and the other people as well, though he would still give Dr. K a lot of lip throughout the entire series, much like Tanya 7 does with Vengex Virus. Now, he would start getting very cryptic dreams as it goes on about his origins, about seeing his sister, an unknown blind woman, and a few other things going on there. He would also have basically activation of his Vengex material starting to accelerate in taking over his body, turning fully mechanicalized, or nightmares of that happening, and it was kind of a major issue through most of the series, to the point where he was more afraid that he was going to be devoured before they were able to find out a cure for it, and would almost be taken over several different times if it wasn't for the fact that Summer noticed something was wrong, or Dr. K was able to stop it all. Now, this would continue to happen throughout the series back and forth, and eventually they would find some ways to slow it down slightly or crack the code ever so slightly here and there. Now, he would also have memories of an area called Kenmore, located in Omega City, where evacuations first happened in the first Vengex attack. They would go there to check out, to investigate, but it was found out it was just a trap. So Vengex was using implanted memories to lure the Rangers into a trap, using him as a decoy, which makes it more seeming, did he let Dillion go, or did Dillion escape on his own? And it's kind of hinted at both ways at several different times. Now, we would find out later on that he did escape, but they were using Dillion in other ways and slowly trying to continue on this, because we'd find out that Dillion was not the only one that had this Vengeance material inside of him throughout the city, but there were many hundreds of sleeper agents also going on there. Now, also going on at this time is that Dillion would hear a melody play in the tune for his watch that he could carry all around. It was the only watch he had memories to this unknown blind woman / his sister. Now, Tanya 7 would also be whistling this, and they had battled several times and were very similar on different levels. Tanya 7 would backtalk Vengex, similar ways that Dillion would Dr. K. She would also basically have the same output of, I'm a lone character, lone wolf, I can do this by myself. Now, upon hearing the same whistling tune, they come to realize that maybe Tanya knows something, and basically they find out they are siblings. Now, it's not immediately figured out, it's like later in the series, but it does find out they're siblings, very similar to Andros and Astronema. Now, Tanya kind of like processes the whole thing and realizes that she's not fully android, but she also bleeds, which then she runs a biological scan, confirms that she is Dillion's sister / D44. Now, the two would work together, but she would be captured and reprogrammed, much like Astronema was, and used as a weapon against him. Now, Dillion would fight them, as well as fighting off the simulation of his entire body and mind into the Vengex virus, and you find just how evil the Vengex virus was. He wasn't just sending monsters of the week to kill him, but he had an overall plan of weakening the defenses, though he was still sending a monster of the week to kill him. With like, if it accelerated the plan, it worked, if not, whatever. Now, Dillion would go throughout the entire series, end up surviving and defeating, along with the other Rangers, the Vengex virus, and would become much closer to Summer and Tanya 7. Tania 7, sorry, I keep saying that wrong, but it's Tania 7. Or now just Tania. And they would continue from there, living a family life of sorts. Now, it's never hinted at what happens after the fact. Beyond that, they're going to rebuild and see a better and brighter future until we see them again in Megaforce. Now, only in Megaforce do we see them in legendary battles that we got there, and it was more just eclipsing. They were not allowed to be shown, pretty much. You wouldn't see them there. Only we saw Scott in the Super Megaforce series, and because there was who has the rights to that series for RPM, because it was the last of the Disney series, and Samurai was a part of the Nickelodeon run, so who had what, it was a really question. So Lawyer Disputes, as long as you don't show his face, but he could voice act, would be fine. They didn't bring back any of the Rangers, and the same thing kind of happened for Megaforce. They just had them in suits, but they never actually showed them doing anything besides maybe some already pre-recorded voice lines from an old series. Now, he would also show up in the Shattered Grid and the Beast Morphers. Again, Beast Morphers is kind of the same thing, just cut and paste character. He's there. Now in the Shattered Grid, he'd be there also fighting against Lord Dragon's army and do more, and have a little snippet of go on, we can do this, lone wolf style. That's kind of it. Now, his personality among his rest of his crew, he was a lone wolf, as I said before, very aloof, gruff, and much withdrawn, because he was the main emo character of that series, and he kind of made the series. Now, in most series, you would go about the Red Ranger is the leader. Well, they always had him kind of be a leader of sorts in many ways. He was never fully listening to Scott, but he respected Scott as the series went on. But in truth, who was the leader? It's not really. They keep saying it's the Red Ranger, but if you watch it carefully, you kind of go, well, they kind of followed Dillon's example a lot. So that was the one main thing. Him and Ziggy were best friends, though Ziggy did wear on his nerves, and he was always there to back up Ziggy throughout the rest of the series. Summer and him had a lot of romantic feelings for each other. They almost kissed several different times, but were always interrupted when water fell on them, or interrupted by Gem and Gemma. By the way, they are my least favorite, those Rangers. And he was also very extremely against Summer getting married in her special episode. Now, that was very interesting because he was basically arguing, but he would get walk out angry, you would see that character who didn't care but he did care type of care going on there. But even after the fact that she accepted she was going to get married to have a helpful family, she was kind of against it as well. Also, it's kind of found out that Dr. K knows that Summer is very attracted to Dillion. Now, why is this? Because she observed several different things about that for Summer, and going, I can see why you like him. He's a bad boy loner. All the things we've listed earlier above, and it would attract Summer's type of character to him. And Dr. K kind of says it would probably attract me if I was just a normal person. Now, Summer would use that same formula against her to realize that Dr. K was interested in Ziggy, as I mentioned in the previous video. So maybe don't tell all your secrets at the same time. Dillion, with the rest of the characters and cast, he was kind of okay with. Gem and Gemma, he never really truly interacted. He kind of probably thought they were childish most of the time because of all their antics. And Finn and him, they at first were not really supportive of one another, but quickly realized that they were both on the same side and necessary. For Tania 7, him and Dillion, she and Dillion got along pretty well after the fact. They kind of really accepted they were the only family they had left. But we don't know any more than that. Early in the series, they were constantly fighting each other. They were kind of like the main clashing of heads. And it was very interesting through their major dialogue because they were just parallels of each other. Now, Dillion, I'm going to go through his arsenal because it's very different. He had an invincible shield, which is something the other Rangers had special powers too, such as Ziggy teleporting, but I bring up his invincible shield because he was a lone wolf. Now, he was given something to protect other people as well as himself, but he wasn't very good at it because he never fully accepted other people to protect them. Now, as the series progressed, he became to use it more and more, and was more accepting to people and protecting people other than himself. When he was in a year on his own, he survived because he had to take care of himself and there was nothing else going on. This shield forced him to do otherwise. So that in itself is a good plot point to change that character and show an evolution. Now, he relied heavily on his nitro sword and hand-to-hand combat because that's where he excelled. He already had super strength, and you add it to the Ranger Black Series Power Ranger armor, he was continually going stronger as time went on. Now, he would be in control of a Zord, and I gotta look at the name of the Zord because I forgot. So he'd be part of the Black. Hold on. He would have a part there. Sorry, I had to look it up. I couldn't remember. Wolf Cruiser and Croc Carrier. So he had 2 Zords. But in reality, once he used the most was Wolf Cruiser. Now, RPM series like to mix cars with animals, mainly because Dr. K really wanted to put her childhood in there, though she didn't say it out loud, with poor excuses. And the cars was basically to show like a Fast and the Furious type feel, because they were always competing. So that's kind of what's going there. They need to keep saving themselves. So that is the end of the episode for Dillion, kind of my favorite character in the entire series of RPM, and a very good character to see as his character whole archetype fully got a whole immersion series rather than one single episode. He had a lot of things going on. I liked the fact that he had to grow as a character to accept others and have to work as a team. It supposedly kind of took one episode, quote unquote, but reality-wise, he didn't fully accept it until or nearly the entire series to protect everybody. Because even when worst came to worst, he was willing to sacrifice himself and basically push everyone away rather than let anyone close enough to see that he was hurt or that he was going to hurt them. But he came to accept that and join them as a group in the end. However, he also would go to do much more than that and basically have this whole nightmare scenarios where he was turning into a robot. And I liked how it wasn't just a one-off fix, like it was this wholly progressive series, like they needed to find a cure, and they could only slow it down for so much. You kind of put a time table to things for the series that most of the rest of the series that came out for Power Rangers did not usually get. So I thought that was a great whole little spin to his character and the like. So I'm going to leave that there, and we have one more episode to go with Gemma and Gemma. And there is not much for them, so we don't expect that episode to be around for much longer. But it has a lot of connections to Dr. K, and we might just make that all 3 there for them. Have a good one, guys, and may the power protect you, always.